Hey everybody, welcome to the middle of nowhere. Today we're going to learn a little bit about the Gigabyte Aorus Pro-P's BIOS, as well as some of the apps that you can get with Gigabyte through Gigabyte once you have Windows installed. We're also going to cover, or I'm also going to cover, how to update your BIOS through the 𝐶flash, and it's actually pretty easy. I've done it about 5 times now. But let's go ahead and start with the BIOS first. So once you slam that delete key or just hold it down upon initial boot, you'll be brought to the BIOS. If it's the first time, you should be brought to the easy mode. If you are in advanced mode already, just hit F2 and you'll be able to get to the easy mode again. And if you want to go back to advanced mode, all you have to do is tap F2 one more time. So easy mode is just that, it's easy. It's for those who maybe want to tweak the XMP profile but not do too much else. So you do have mouse control, which is nice, but always your 4 arrow keys will work just fine. So if you want to, first thing you want to do, obviously with a new build, is always set the XMP profile. So this RAM kit only has one, so if you just got into the BIOS for the first time, this should show up as disabled, and then you just click on it once to get to profile 1. You can also show your boot sequence. Here you can see I have a USB drive plugged in. I only have one hard drive, and so if you wanted to make sure that this was a boot drive, because it's a Windows installer, you wanted to make sure that was booting first, you could go ahead and switch orders. So I guess you just drag and drop. Yep, looks like you just drag and drop, so that's cool. Or looks like you shift and arrow up and down, so that's also pretty cool. The Windows Boot Manager is for my NVMe drive right here, so we can go ahead and hit escape if we want, and there it is. So over here you can see what SATA devices are connected. We currently have 0. You can see what PCI devices are connected. We just have our graphics card. And what M.2 devices are connected. We have our boot drive in the second slot, which is a PCI 3.0 slot. The reason I did that is because this is a PCI 3.0 drive. So if I ever decide to get a PCI 4.0 drive, I can put that in the top slot and take advantage of that speed. Here we have our fans, and we're linked to SmartFan 5. If you click on that, this allows you within the BIOS to tweak the fan curve so that you can have an optimal sound to cooling ratio, if you will. You can set up how fast the fan goes, at what percent it increases its RPMs, basically, and do temperature warnings as well. CPU fan fail warning, so I guess, oh, that might be good to have too. So you can enable that, so we'll do that. So you can determine the fan control mode, so we definitely want PWM, CPU fan stop, so that means 0 RPMs. So we have that disabled, so it should not go to 0. And of course we have our fan speed, and there's some presets here, which is cool too. Now all of this can also be done within a Gigabyte app, which I'll go over in a little bit. So after we're done with tweaking our fan, you can just go here. And other than that, easy mode also has a bunch of information about your system. There's a little area for RAID. We don't have any hard drives, enough hard drives rather, to set up a RAID array. And then of course you have some other quick setup features. You can use 𝐶flash to flash your BIOS. Again, access SmartFan. Help is really neat because then it lets you gets you to some more of those advanced features. You can even print screen. So why not? In order to print a screen, you have to have a USB drive. I forgot about that. It won't just save to a hard drive somewhere because we're not in Windows. So you have to make sure if you're going to print screen from your BIOS for whatever reason which would actually come in handy, like if you need to save some memory settings because you went and customized it yourself, you just got to make sure you have a USB drive in there. Okay, so that's enough of the easy mode. Let's get into advanced mode. I'll go ahead, hit F2. We are going to not go to tweaker, we're going to go to favorites first. So favorites is just that, it lets you save some of the things that you might use the most if you go into the BIOS a lot. Automatically, I don't even know how to set favorites, but we'll figure it out as we go. We have our clock ratio, clock control, extreme profile. That would make sense because every time you update a BIOS, it's going to reset things, so you might want stuff that you access a lot. Our vCore load line calibration, CSM support. Sure, one of these things would be considered my favorite. So the tweaker mode is where you're going to do any overclocking that you might want to do, or again, set your XMP, disabled and profile 1. This just has one profile. You can also go into advanced memory settings and get into the subtimings and really tweak your cache latency if you want to try and tighten things up to squeeze out as much performance as you can. Okay, what else can we do here? We can set our CPU clock ratio. So if we want to do some overclocking there, Precision Boost Overdrive, says enabled. This is not where you're going to actually activate it. So this is more of, I mean, you can, oh, it looks like it actually mirrors what's in the other area. So that's good. But here, don't activate it here. I'll show you where you're going to activate it. Where else we can do? We can do our voltage. So we should be able to do some RAM voltage right here. That should be set to 1.35 because we're overclocked. Ours is at 1.38. That's interesting. Should be at 1.35. So, okay. I guess that's set to auto probably because of the XMP profile. So yeah, so the tweaker area is not where you do meth, but where you overclock your system. In settings, we have a whole bunch of things that probably might not make a bunch of sense to you, and so let's go over them a little bit too. Platform power, this is probably about the power and waking up LAN, so you can kind of set whether or not your LAN wakes when you wake the system, so on and so forth. I really, you can tell by how I'm talking, I don't know a lot about what's going on right here. And honestly, I wouldn't touch it. I'm not even sure who this is for. Possibly if you have crappy power, or if you just really want to make sure everything's efficient. I haven't used it. I/O ports, so you can, here you can set up 4G encoding, which you will need if you decide to dabble in mining. You will also, I believe, need it for resizable bar, which is right here. So you have two options, auto or disabled. You definitely want resizable bar auto if you have a RTX 3000 series or a new AMD 6000 series GPU. So make sure that's set to auto, and make sure 4G encoding is set to enabled. So you can go ahead and turn off your HD audio controller. I believe that is for the front audio. PCIe bifurcation, this is really neat. This is set to auto right now. So what bifurcation means is if I have my GPU in the top slot, which is by 16, but then I need to put in use the other two slots, which is honestly only a by 1 and by 4. If I need to, I can split up the lanes so that the other two slots get things that they need. But honestly, we just leave this at auto because there's not enough PCI slots to really affect this anyway. The other two slots are controlled by the chipset anyway, so I don't think this would actually impact you at all on this motherboard. I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments if I am. But I don't think bifurcation would matter here. So again, yeah, your concern is make sure these two things are enabled in auto. Let's see here, Super I/O configuration for serial ports, or if you have a COM port, we don't have that. USB configuration, so I just leave these to their defaults. Your NVMe configuration, this will show your drive. If for whatever reason you're having issues, like I did last night when I set this up, and your NVMe drive wasn't showing up for whatever reason, and it wasn't, odds are you have to reinstall it. And I did. I just made sure that it was really making contact, and that finally, once I rebooted into the BIOS, showed up there. SATA configuration, you can set up SATA RAID mode. You can actually set up NVMe RAID mode. So on my review video for this motherboard, it didn't seem that you could actually set up an NVMe RAID, but I guess you can, so that's kind of cool. So if you have two NVMe drives that are the same and you want to set up a RAID, you can do that in addition to setting up a RAID through the SATA ports as well. So here's our information for our LAN port, which is a 2.5 gigabit Realtek solution. So if you need to get that information there. Network stack configuration, that's just disabled. I never touched that. So let's see here. Miscellaneous. This one has some, you can control the LEDs if you're in sleep. So if you want to make sure all your LEDs go off, you can do that. And then if you want to do some testing with 3D Mark, you can do, I guess, enable that as well for legacy benchmarks. Here is where we'll find our AMD CPU FTPM. It is auto-enabled as of the latest BIOS. Trusted Computing Platform 2.0 is what you need. So this, you want the latest BIOS on this motherboard if you're going to go to Windows 11. It will activate automatically FTPM. so you won't run into any issues trying to install Windows 11. Additionally, this motherboard has a physical TPM module header, so if you want to go that route, you can as well. Let's go here, AMD CBS, P-Core, or Core P states, whole bunch of other information. And just to reiterate, as with my other two BIOS tour videos, this is not an overclock guide whatsoever. So let me get that disclaimer in there very late. This is just a tour so that you can kind of familiarize yourself with some of the things if you don't have your computer up and running, or if you have some questions, and hopefully I can answer them. Clearly, I'm not an expert in BIOSes. There are so many options in these things, it's easy to get lost, like in a maze, so just keep that in mind. Now, for PBO2, you want to go there. So let me go back here. AMD overclocking, Precision Boost Overdrive, I already have it enabled. It starts off at auto, I just tack it to enabled, and then I don't really do anything else. You can do some manual CPU overclocking if you want, and you can actually do, where was it? Was it here? You can set up some curves to make sure that you're actually undervolting your, might be here. I'm not gonna actually do it. I just don't. But you can set up some, it's not that. Where is it on this motherboard? You can set up some curves so that you can undervolt and still achieve the same performance. Essentially what it does is it takes up less juice, which means you'll have lower temperatures while maintaining higher frequencies via PBO. Oops, sorry. So I don't know where that is on this motherboard. Figure it would be around here somewhere. And that's okay. But yeah, so if you want to tinker, go ahead, go for it. Otherwise, just, if you don't, just go to enabled and you should be okay. Oh, that's where it was, advanced. There it is, curve optimizer. So Precision Boost Overdrive, advanced, curve optimizer, all cores, sure. And then you can do a positive or negative, and then you can get in there and tweak things. We had that innate disabled, we'll keep it disabled, go back to enabled, keep it simple. That's what I like to do. All right, then we have our PC health. So you can look at some more information here, how much power things are being drawn, whether or not the case is open. So this motherboard does have a little header for case intrusion, or chassis intrusion, if you will. And what that does is if you have this little component, you can set up and it will notify, it will basically make it an annoying alarm or disable the system if the panel is open. It's good for office PCs, I would say, or even, I guess, home invasion. So if you want to make sure things are kept safe. And then again, our Smart Fan 5 right here, so you can go ahead and set up all your controls if you want. Then we have our system info. This gives us, again, some of the information that we already know, such as the BIOS version, the CPU being used, the RAM, and the capacity, and the speeds, and the times, and all that good stuff. So if your time, for whatever reason, isn't right, you can go ahead and set it here as well if it's not working in Windows. Plug-in devices, we got nothing. QFlash. This is where you can update your BIOS either through a file from a USB drive, or I don't know if you can do it through the internet here. Doesn't look like it. Looks like only the file, so that's fine. So if you don't want to use the QFlash button and you can get into the BIOS, you do it here. All you gotta do is download the current BIOS, put it on your USB drive, plug it in here, find the file, hit run. It does a neat little graphic, and then it takes maybe 5-10 minutes. It's actually pretty cool and straightforward and very easy. Otherwise, if you use QFlash, the button on when the computer's turned off, you have to just take the BIOS file, rename it to gigabyte.bin, all lowercase, and then plug it into the appropriate USB port and hit the QFlash, and then wait for that light to stop blinking. Either way, it's very good. You can also update your BIOS in Windows, which I'll get to in a bit. And then our boot. So you can set your boot order here, which I showed you in easy mode as well. You can also set up fast boot. So fast boot just basically means how quick it goes through the post and to get to Windows. If you go super fast, ultra fast, you're not going to be able to get to the BIOS no matter how much you hit that delete key. I believe it goes too fast. You can also set up some security features like an administrator password and user password, and also do secure boot as well. So it is currently enabled. And then for operating mode, I believe this is set to auto, so that means the last version I was in, or mode, which would be advanced. You could always also have it just enter easy mode or advanced mode, depending on what you like to do. I just keep it at auto. And then finally we come to save and exit. So you can exit without saving, you can save and exit, you can load optimized defaults, which will basically just think of it as like clearing CMOS. It just puts everything back to factory default. No XMP profile, no overclocks, the fan curves and everything else, they're gone. And then you can do a boot override. So just in case something is going on with the boot over there, you can make sure, hey, I want to make sure this always boots. And then finally, you can save profiles. So if you do a lot of overclocking, or you just forgot what your settings were, especially if you manually tweak the RAM, you can save profiles and always recall it. Just be aware that every time you update a BIOS, and I'm going to just say this even if it's maybe not true for a Gigabyte motherboard, because it is for my ASUS motherboard. Every time you update the BIOS, your profiles are cleared. So if you want to ensure that you always have that saved profile, you can also save it to a USB disk, if not your hard drive. I don't know. Let's see if this actually goes to your hard drive or not. Nope, doesn't look like. Oh, maybe. What's this do? Microsoft boot. No, okay, so it doesn't. It looks like you definitely have to make sure it's a USB or attachable hard drive. And so we're gonna go here, save, because we did make some changes. So we enabled our fail warning. We made sure that our fan's set to PWM because it is a 4-pin, and I don't want it not being 4-pin PWM. And we went from profile to profile for our XMP. So let's say you did something that you don't want saved, you can go back, undo it, and this tells you exactly what you did. So that's good. So then none of our PBO or anything like that got taken into account. After you're done, all you gotta do, save, computer reboots with your new settings, and you are good to go. Now let's go ahead and get into the Gigabyte apps.
I lied.
All right, to update the BIOS using Gigabyte's QFlash, all you need to do, and you can do this without the CPU or RAM even installed, is to get your motherboard out, your power supply, connect your CPU power connector here, and your 24-pin power here. After that, you take your FAT32 formatted USB drive with the file in there. Be sure to rename the BIOS file to gigabyte.bin. You put it into the designated USB port, and then you simply press and hold the button, and you should see a light. Oh, there we go. It might help if I actually had the PSU on. Okay, now press and hold. All right, looks like it's being accessed. We're good to go. So then there is a little light that is blinking, and I'm going to take my camera off so you can see it. So there you go. So once that light, that blinking light there, stops blinking, then you are done. And also my USB drive has kind of a read light going on, so I assume once that is stopped, it'll be good to go as well. This can take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And in case you're wondering which BIOS did I choose, I chose the F10 BIOS. That is the first BIOS revision that enables 5000 series CPUs. After that, I'll install the CPU, get the computer up and running. I'm going to do a test boot before I even shove this into the case. And then I'll see if it works. Hopefully it does. And from there, yeah, we'll update the BIOS to the most recent version. Now we're going to go over the software that is more or less a companion for the Gigabyte B550m Aorus Pro-P motherboard. You can get this software on the motherboard's product page under the support section. If you don't have the App Center booting up when Windows starts, you can simply find it under the Start menu. Just go to Gigabyte, and you have all your software here, and you can launch the App Center. The App Center, consider it a hub. It's actually a pretty nice piece of software. You have Gigabyte's apps that you can download individually, and we'll go over these in a second. You have common Windows settings, so think of it as getting to the control panel quite easily, but through the App Center. And then there are some third-party softwares as well. If you need to download updates, you can click on that, and it will check for updates. Let's say you had a bunch of the software not yet installed. You could individually select, you could have it all selected, and you can also unselect through that method. As you can see here, though, all I have is Norton Internet Security, which they provide for free, but I'm not going to install that. You can go back to what you have for your Gigabyte apps, and then also there is a settings tab, so you can set up a different kind of color for the app. You can choose to always run on next reboot. You can choose auto time sync, auto BIOS language, and the update schedule as well. So while in Windows boot, once a day, week, monthly, every 3 months, or turn it off altogether, so that you have more granular control when you update your apps. So let's say we change it to green, so let's hit OK. So now you can see that it's green. And I'll just go back to Aorus orange. For the first piece of software that I want to open and talk about, let's go over the BIOS software. So we just double click that. It's initializing. So what this allows you to do is to update your BIOS within Windows. Updating a BIOS can seem rather intimidating, but it really isn't. Already through this video, I've shown you how to do it within the BIOS as well as how to use QFlash. But here is a third method, and that is actually doing it within Windows. This can come off as probably the most risky method. A lot of people don't necessarily, for whatever reason, recommend updating a BIOS within Windows itself. So this provides you with various means of updating your BIOS. You can do it over the internet by pinging a Gigabyte server. So let's see, we'll go to US. See if they have an update since I've updated here. Windows. All right, we'll just allow it. And then it will see it here. It should determine whether or not there is a new version. Oh, looks like we have one. Version F10. That can't be right. Currently I'm rocking F14e, so we're not gonna update, but if I wanted to, I could. I don't know why they would have me go to F10. But yeah, so that's an example of that. We are not going to update the BIOS here. I already feel that I have the most current version. Not sure why they would have it be F10, but we'll move on. The other means, of course, is you can update from a file if you've already downloaded the most recent BIOS. And then you can also, it looks like you can save to a file and then use the face wizard, which I have no idea what that is. But this goes over your BIOS information, tells you which one you have. So like I said, I have F14e. Tells me the flash memory type. So I assume this might come in handy if you ever have to maybe somehow replace the chip or get a device that can help you muck with the BIOS and flash it. And this will be helpful information. But that's the BIOS app in a nutshell. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. All right, moving on. EasyTune. So this is an overclocking app. And it also allows you to, I believe, control your fans here maybe, but that might be a different app. But anyway, so you have your default. You can go eco mode if you want. You have OC, so it will provide an all-core boost all the way up to 4.5 gigahertz. And then there's auto tuning. So let's see here. For some reason, can we get to OC? Yes. But I can't get to eco. Odd. All right, well, we'll stay at default. Oh, and you saw it boost for a second there. But again, has my BIOS information, current processor speed, your RAM speed, and what the GPU is at. Then we can go to advanced CPU OC. So this provides you with a little bit more granular control over how you overclock the processor. So more or less mirrors information within the BIOS, but this just does it from a Windows environment. And then we have our memory. So our frequency is 2666. Let's see here, that's interesting. So I don't know what all these are, but let's go to 32, see what happens. Do I have to hit accept? I know we got a couple of buttons, so we'll just go back. Where was it? 2666 there. We'll just go back to that. And then, okay, that just puts it away. Advanced power states. So again, a lot of this stuff is in the BIOS as well. So one thing I would like to see is maybe some hover over contextual menus so that you can actually see what these things do. So voltage seems to be the only thing we can control here. And then we have a hotkey. So, oh cool, so looks like you can save some profiles as well. And so off turns it off maybe? Sure. And there you go. So that's the EasyTune. Again, most of this can be done in the BIOS, and that's probably where I'd recommend you do it. But at a one button click, if you want to do 4.5 gigahertz all-core, if you have the CPU cooler to handle it, then go for it. Let's see what this does. Okay, so this is just arrow over for more information. So this is actually even more specific information. So that's simple view, that's more advanced view. So we have our temperature here. So let's see what happens if we go OC. Because that will put everything up to all-core. So how much will our CPU increase in temperature? It didn't. It's probably a good thing. Interesting. All right. Well, cool. Go back to default. I just don't feel that you need an all-core overclock all the time because it just puts unnecessary stress. Remember, heat is the killer of CPUs, so if it does end up getting too hot, then you'll shorten the lifespan of your CPU. So moving on from EasyTune. So with Game Boost, you're provided a list of software that you can then optimize. So you have some shortcut keys here, Control-B, Control-R to optimize and revert. Additionally, you just can select a piece of software, hit go, and it optimizes it. Because there's no games on here, there's nothing I can really actually optimize. And I can't even, well, we could try OneDrive. I don't know. We'll just hit go. What's going to happen? Okay, so apparently now OneDrive is optimized. So after that, we can just go ahead and revert if you're feeling uncomfortable. All right, we'll just close that. We should be fine. Okay, so that is Game Boost in a nutshell. Again, tinker with it, see what happens. Might not really provide any benefit, you never know. What it could end up doing, my theory is that it just basically focuses your PC to provide more resources for that application that you boost. Okay, we're going to save RGB Fusion for last. Next up is system information. So another app that provides you with a bunch of information. This is where you can alter your fan. So it's connected to SmartFan 5 Advanced, which again is in the BIOS. So we have SmartFan Auto, so we can have some presets, which is nice. Or you can get really granular and set up a curve, which is always nice too, which I believe, yes, I already have. You can also prevent auto fan stop, so allows system fans to stop or run at idle when the temperature source drops below the minimum temperature setting. So that's always nice. So, and you can choose which system fans are being controlled at any given time. We only have one fan connected, so that's why we have all these question marks. So CPU is the only one. System alert, so you can kind of have alarms go off depending on what temperature threshold you set things at, so that's kind of cool as well. So that looks like it probably, yep, turns it on and off. Then you have hardware monitor, okay, and then record. So it looks like you can record, let's say you want to do some Cinebench runs, you can probably record some temperatures, and that's actually pretty cool too. Nice little system monitor. Let's see how much resources these things are taking. So App Center is taking hardly anything, just a little bit of RAM. Thermal console, that's taking up just more RAM and hardly any CPU power. So that's actually kind of cool. So let's close that. So it went up to about 1%. So let's see how much the BIOS. The reason I'm doing this is just to see, because people consider this crap bloatware. So I just want to see how much actual resources it's taking. Okay, BIOS. Game Boost is right there. So really, hardly anything. Takes up more RAM than anything, but if you have enough RAM, you should be okay. So right now you can see we're at 16-17% usage. Let's see here, EasyTune. Okay, so there's that. 52 megs. So really, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket even when you have 16 gigs of RAM. But if every little bit counts, then yeah, you're definitely going to want to kill the processes for these. And then let's go to Smart Backup next. So that is taking up very little RAM and basically no CPU. So that's awesome. These seem fairly well optimized. Just minimize that. Okay, so smart backup. This allows you, it's built-in backup software. It's pretty nifty. These things usually cost quite a bit of money and are a subscription service half the time nowadays. So you can do file recovery, system recovery. You can always run it on the next boot. You can do a backup. So if we did a backup, I don't think it would do anything because there's no other hard drive. So we can create a rescue drive for the operating system, so that's cool. And set up settings. So okay, so it looks like you can designate an area where you want to have it back up to. So if you have a NAS or just an additional hard drive that's used as mass storage, then you can create yourself a backup drive inside here. Oops. Okay. Here we go. Cancel. Finally, we come to RGB Fusion 2.0. Now, this software, what can I say? I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not a huge fan of it. It doesn't have a lot of settings. It has some preset colors and things, but I don't care for it. I just don't. So we have Pulse, and you can link your motherboard and RAM and other peripherals that show up maybe. It has speed settings and brightness, which is nice. Color cycle, let's go fast. And then you can see it kind of mirrors on the software itself as well as on the components that are being affected. This motherboard has only the audio trace towards right over here that lights up. Then these two components here are connected to the motherboard, so it will be affected by RGB Fusion. The three fans use a controller, which I've shown off in my previous build video for this computer. And then this cannot change color at all. So you can, with RGB Fusion, you can link your components, or you can go individual. So we'll just click by clicking on the RAM. Now we have a solid pink, whereas the fans, yep, and you can see that will be digital LED. So we can go, can we though? There we go, there it is. So we can go a different color altogether. So you just choose your color, hit apply, and it will mirror or reflect on the component that you chose. If you want to go back to sync mode, all you have to do is click sync mode, and there you go. Now we're back to color cycle. We'll go back to static, and we were at a nice red. And so, and you can manually put in RGB component color codes, which is actually pretty nice. So that way you can get really specific. I mean, this is RGB, so you should have millions upon millions of colors to choose from. Additionally, you can use a 6-digit hex code, which is more in line with web color, which is also cool. So that way you can get really, really accurate. And it should just, it's not, but why not? It should just reflect your color immediately. So we're at red. There's no apply button once it's synced, so that's weird. Let me go back. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is the bugginess of it. It's so annoying. Come on. There's no way to also choose individual. Let me go here. We're going to go red here. Apply. So that's red. See, I shouldn't have to do this individually. That's dumb. And is that gonna go? I don't know. There, so it's nice and buggy. Ladies and gentlemen, RGB Fusion. If you can find an alternate source, or if you can get it to actually work, then go for it. So if you go into this, we'll just move on. So if you can go to the settings, you can choose to have LEDs go off during hibernation or off mode. You can have it choose to run it on next reboot or not, and you can have an update schedule. So this is while Windows boots. You can also set a password. Not sure why, but sure. Just cancel out of that. And so yeah, so if you go to the digital LED strips connections, have much more options than the RAM does itself. So you have pulse, flash, double flash, excuse me, color cycle, etc., and then digital colors, which are kind of neat. Don't really, they just do extra stuff and which is completely washed out on the camera right now. Let's see here. Can you kind of see it now? Maybe. Probably not. Yeah, it's just washed out. But yeah, so that's RGB Fusion. I'm, again, not a huge fan. I don't know why it has to be this way. Like, why can't it just be good? Good would be good. So if we go back to just a see, it won't even let me choose it. Come on, static, red. It's, oh, let's look at the resources. RGB Fusion, 113 megs of RAM. That might be too much. Not taking up a lot of CPU resources at least, so that's good. You can hear the frustration. Come on, RAM, let's work. All right, we're gonna, maybe if I quit out of it, we'll end task, and we'll open it back up. There you go. Okay, so that worked. So if all else fails, end task in Task Manager and then reboot the program. And that should get you back up and running. All right, I've taken up enough time going over these bits of software and the BIOS and QFlash. Hopefully this tour of all those things has given you more insights into the motherboard. And I would go even so far as to say, I would assume a lot of these things will be similar from Aorus motherboard to Aorus motherboard. You might have some more options in the BIOS depending on what motherboard you have and what features it already has available, excuse me. And that's going to do it for me, everybody. Thanks for watching the video. Hit that like button if you liked what you saw and found this content helpful to you. If you didn't like what you saw, hey, provide me some feedback and let me know what you'd like to see different. Show your support for the channel by clicking subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification icon so you don't miss out on any future content. And hey, while you're here, why don't you check out some of the other videos I've made. Leave any questions or comments you have down below and I'll be sure to read them, and I'll also try to even respond to them. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time in the middle of nowhere.